Our guest today is Robert Delamontagne. He is the author of The Retiring Mind. Robert, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here. So, how to make the psychological transition to retirement. What's this book about? Obviously.
Okay. It's a story about something that I went through after I retired, after 25 years of running a company. Um, I really went under, I think, psychological stress. I didn't feel right emotionally. And I thought to myself, well, look, I'm a psychologist. I ought to be able to figure this out. So I wrote the book really based on trying to resolve my own issues. And I started to uncover all sorts of things as I was writing it. Number one, I came to the realization that it's a much larger problem than anybody talks about. People are embarrassed to talk about the fact that they don't feel well after they retire. And if you look at some of the athletes and so forth, you can always tell they have a very difficult time, particularly when they're superstars. So I began doing research on this, and I uncovered so many concepts and ideas that I decided to write a book about it. And the big thing that I came up with was the concept of achievement addiction. And if you are a supercharged personality type and you are accustomed to being successful and being well thought of by your peers uh, and so forth, you're setting yourself up to have a problem whenever you retire, because life slows down. You don't get the accolades, you don't get the attention, you don't have the spirit of achievement with your teammates and so forth. It's just like a void. It's exactly what it feels like. It's like walking into something that's a void. So uh, I once again I use the Enneagram to uh, determine your personality type. And there are like 3 or 4 personality types that are most susceptible to this problem. The perfectionist, the star, the thinker, the leader. They're the ones that have a tendency to have supercharged personality types. And so we diagnose that in the book. And I also have short stories about people that I met during my research that had terrible problems.
Nice.
And what how they felt when they went through it. And so this book is really designed to help people when they retire make the adjustment psychologically from their working life to their retirement life.
You and I talked about all the people that are being laid off right now, and that might even apply to some of the people that are struggling with trying to find a new job right now. This is, in case you're watching this down the road, this is March of 2023. And so there's a lot going on in the work industry right now. So people maybe are retiring early because there's just not the opportunity out there. Maybe they got laid off and they just don't know what to do with that, or they're just retiring, period, right?
All right.
So what is so obviously those all those people would be great purchasers of your book. Who else would be?
Well, I think anybody who uh, feels as though they're going through some transition that's not exactly pleasant. And I've had people that I've interviewed told me that when they retired, they felt like they were going to die. It was on the level of feeling like there was a death in the family on that level. And one person was a superstar in his entire life. He set every sales record for a pharmaceutical company, started his own company. He sold his company, and the CEO, the chairman of the company he sold it to, in like 3 months, fired him. And he had to cope with that. It was awful. I mean, he went through a terrible time. And I have several people like that. A woman who was really a real fireball. She worked for the federal government. She retired and she moved to the Continental Divide and lived in a log cabin her son had built for her. And she just lost it because there wasn't anything for her to do.
Right.
And so the decisions that you make when you retire in terms of where you live, who you're with, what you do are absolutely critical. And the other thing that I was my problem, and I didn't have an alternative life when I retired. I worked so hard. I was so focused on the success of the company, and I got so much out of it that I didn't play golf, play tennis. I didn't do the things or cultivate the things that uh, would be sort of something I could fall back on
Right.
when I retired of enjoyment. And so I would recommend that whenever prior to your retirement, think about what it is you enjoy doing, and and then pursuing that.
So if that means like someone's interested in, I want to travel the world once I retire, start doing miniature, mini weekend trips or whatever, just kind of getting into that mode of how's this going to look in my future
Exactly.
when I do
Well,
this type of
the
thing.
other thing I think that the book, the real thing it can do for people is just alert them to the fact that this could happen to them. You see, it happened to me. I didn't know what the heck was going on. And I was totally unprepared. No one had ever told me that this could possibly happen. So, uh, just knowing that when you go through this, it could be something fairly natural that you have to go through in order to get to the other side. That in and of itself is a tremendous advantage.
That's huge. I started buying this book for relatives and friends of mine who are retiring and in that same boat. I have a brother who was a nuclear supervisor who just wasn't sure. He's kind of flapping. He doesn't know, what to do with this time and stuff. So I totally relate to this book as far as seeing it in friends and families that are going through this. So when I am done reading this book, when anybody is done reading this book, what is the last thought you want them to have about, or the one thought? If they put down this thought, they only had one thought, what would it be that thought?
I think the thought would be that I have a path I can follow to get me through this.
Okay. Making a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Robert, thank you so much for sharing your information about this book. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Marianne.